Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Why I Love Flagler County, your local podcast spotlighting local businesses and local residents on what they love about being a part of Flagler County. So today I'm super excited to have my guest, Miss Erica, with us today. Erica, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, Eric and I met just a week ago. It's crazy how like time flies, but it's like it's been so long, but it's only been like 5, 6 days.
Right.
But we met at the Flagler
Tiger
Thai
Bay Club.
Bay. That's what it's
Yes.
called. Apologies. I just joined. And it was really
Oh,
awesome.
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, so we got to talking and then we sat at a table and I just really loved what she's doing for the community on education and support. And I'll really let her tell her story. But Erica, again, thank you for the time. Why don't you tell
Absolutely.
just a little bit about your journey coming here to Flagler to start us off?
Yeah, so I actually moved to Flagler County in 2003. It was May of 2003, and that was actually my senior year of high school. So I actually did graduate from FPC, and I moved down with my family. My father works for Comcast. He had a decent offering in this area as an engineer, so that's how I arrived. And they no longer live here, but my brother and I are still in Flagler County. And I went into my industry, which is currently sexual health education, sometime after high school. So in 2000, let's see, I graduated in '04. Had a little bit of a journey where I joined the military. I came back, became an EMT.
Wow,
That
thank
didn't
you for all
that
your services.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so originally, just for context, originally I really wanted to go to medical school. So I had really good grades and I excelled academically in school, and the goal was to go to medical school. But some other events happened at which kind of go hand in hand with my business and with my nonprofit, where I actually became a homeless teenager after high school. So I didn't get to go straight to college like I had wanted to. During those 2 years that I was a homeless teen, I had to really work hard to kind of get my life back on my, like, I had to get back on my feet. I didn't have the resources available to really do that in terms of like family support or going to college and things like that. So I had to kind of do everything on my own. And one of those stepping stones for me was the military. I went into the Navy. And I had a medical discharge. When I came back, I was trying to kind of still follow that path of medical, because I was a corpsman. So I thought, okay, maybe I can come back and go, become an EMT or a paramedic. I went to Daytona State and became an EMT. But now we fast forward to about 2008, recession hit. Not a lot of people were hiring. In Flagler County, we needed a fire certification to get hired. I didn't have that. And I'm like, okay, where is this going? I'm like, what am I meant to do? And that's when I finally went into sexual health education. And the reason why I felt like that was an important field to go into is because when I was homeless, I ended up going through a sexual trauma. And when I was in the military, I went through another sexual trauma. And I'm like, how am I a part of two statistics? One person going through this multiple times in their lifetime. There's got to be a way to prevent it. So I always felt like sexual health education was a good starting point for sexual assault prevention. And that's kind of where my story begins as far as my business and the nonprofit. But that's how I got to Flagler County. There's obviously more details, and
Sure.
my inbox is always open for anyone that wants to hear more about my story. But that's a quick synopsis of how I arrived and how I got to the point of this industry that I'm in.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing. I know it's so interesting how we have some types of interest when we're a little bit younger and then things happen. It all sometimes leads back. And I really love your highlight of education for prevention, right? We definitely want the support system for women and men and anyone who has gone through something like this. We want to be able to give them that support system, but we also want to be there in just teaching young kids of what is out there, just being aware. And I think people will be very surprised by the level of education that goes up, the level of prevention can go up too. So I love
Absolutely.
that's a perfect segue to talk a little bit about your business and also your nonprofit. So I'll let you take it from there.
Sure, sure. So once I got into sexual health education, my main platform there was to educate. And, sometimes there's a misconception that I'm teaching something that's vulgar, or, I'm talking to people that may be too young to hear about sex, but it's not what people think it is.
Right.
So, as a sexual health educator or someone that is speaking on sexual assault prevention, my thing is safety. That's the biggest platform here, is safety. So, when I talk to minors, it's more so information on consent. So that's my biggest thing, is consent information should be accessible to anyone regardless of age, and that type of education should be accessible to everybody, even if it's something as simple as learning how to have boundaries and say no if you don't want something as simple as a hug. You don't want to be hugged, or you don't want to be kissed, even if it's a family member. And I don't know if people know this, but a lot of sexual abuse that happens at a young age is perpetrated normally by a family member or someone close to the family. 91% of cases,
Wow.
actually. So, yeah, it's huge. A lot of times, we talk about, being careful with strangers, but really 91% is a huge statistic where it's someone close. And that's another reason why I think it's important to talk about consent and boundaries at an earlier age, so that we're giving a voice to someone younger who may not know how to vocalize that something has happened to them, God forbid, but
Right.
being able to have that voice. So that's part of it. As far as the adults that I work with, it's normally relationship and communication skills, amongst people that are married. I also talk to single people on how to stay safe, obviously with teens and dating and stuff like that, pregnancy prevention, STI prevention, things of that nature. So it kind of involves a huge scope of things. I do speak at certain events. I did an event in Washington, D.C. in January, which was based on relationships. I also will kind of connect with other nonprofits in the community as well. So on the business side is really the coaching side, where I talk to couples or people one-on-one, and that's a discreet and safe space to talk about relationship concerns, feelings, things like that. And then on the nonprofit side is geared towards victims advocacy. So if you're someone that has gone through a trauma, whether that's sexual in nature, domestic violence, homelessness, some sort of traumatic circumstance where you're needing a resource, or just support, that's the nonprofit side. So I have a support group that I facilitate on first and third Wednesdays, and that's free of charge for any survivor of a traumatic circumstance. And then, of course, I do a lot of outreach in the community as well, which is part of the nonprofit side.
Wow, that's really amazing. So thank you again for sharing a lot of that. There's just so many topics that I love that you brought up, and I think I especially love, especially for kids and teaching them consent from any age. And like you said, it doesn't have to be something absurd for us to, I think, to comprehend.
Yeah.
But even like I volunteer a lot with kids just at my local church, right? I'm always like very conscious of like, hey, he doesn't want to play with that toy right now, right? I'm not going to force him to do that. I'm not going to force to take the toy away either, right? Like there are things like, okay, we do have to clean up. You do have to go now. We are doing this now. But it's if it's in a space where I they don't have to do something like that, I'm not going to force them to do
You're not gonna
something.
force.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or
Mhm.
like a lot of the kids are coloring, but one doesn't. And the coloring isn't an end all be all activity. The cat
Right.
doesn't have to color. He can go play
Yeah.
with the little truck that he likes to play. And
And
for
I
the
think
most part,
it's
yeah,
it's important too to allow, if you have if that attitude, and they feel comfortable being able to say no, then it gives them a safe space to say, okay, they gave me the space to say no, therefore if something were to happen, they know that they can come to you. You're building that trust, essentially, because I know for me as a kid, my parents didn't talk about anything in regards to dating or sex or anything like that, or even consent information. And even in a church setting, I'm someone that goes to church every Sunday, and it's something that isn't spoken about in places of worship either. And that made it harder for me as a child to speak up on those
sure.
topics. And I think that's unfortunate. I feel like children should feel like they can go to their parents, like they can go to their pastor, like they can go to a teacher. And I think that's the most important part, is providing that space where they feel comfortable doing so, and they're not going to think like, I might get in trouble if I say something. Like that's the
Right.
last thing we
Yeah.
want them to feel.
Exactly, especially when it's something that they already feel bad about. They don't want to go to somewhere who's gonna make someone who's gonna make them feel worse about it. And not to get into like the whole psychology thing, but of course, if a child doesn't feel like, like you are the end all be all authority, like you are forcing them to do everything now, then they get confused of like, what can I make my own choice about, you know? So if I
Exactly.
let a kid do whatever he wants and I say, okay, now we do have to clean up, hopefully if the kid is, in a good mood as well, like he'll be like, okay, well, this is the one thing she is telling me to do. I can clean up. And for the most part, the kids are just so wonderful. And they're so young, they're like only 3 or 4, right? So there's only so much they
Aw.
can do anyway. But they're the loveliest little things. And I love, being able to instill those habits as a young kid. And then also even when you're 17, 18, right? You use your words. But sometimes still we have that kind of authority, I think, mindset. I know at least I did. It's like, I can't say no to this. I have to do this because someone is telling me. It's like, no, it's not, if you don't want to at all, if you're uncomfortable,
Yeah.
you can say
And
no. It is absolutely your right.
yep, yep. And that's the thing, is that's the part of prevention. People are like, well, how does this prevent? I'm like, if we're raising people in this capacity where they have the ability to speak up, they have the ability to say no, that is going to encourage the prevention of different types of assaults. I think that the more closed off that we are, and the more fearful that people are speaking up, the more of these assaults happen and they stay hidden and unreported, et cetera, et cetera. So I think people don't realize how closely related consent information and different types of assault actually are linked. So, because
Yeah.
people are like, sex ed, what does that have to do with sexual assault prevention? I'm like, it has everything to do with
Yeah, it does.
it.
And I think also sometimes, and I'll be honest, honestly, if someone is just a terrible, if they want to do something terrible, they'll do something terrible,
They
right?
will,
But
right?
I think also for them to learn consent as well is that I think a lot of people have this belief like, oh, someone's telling me no, that means yes. And it's like, no,
I know I've
that's
asked
not what the word's for. If they want,
during
they'll say yes, they'll say yes.
during presentations, I'll ask, I'm like, okay, yes is yes, no is no. What does maybe mean? It means no.
It
So
means not a yes.
yes, it's not a yes, therefore it is no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's just very interesting to see how people's perceptions, and it's just, slow education into making it very normalized for people to think about. Um,
Yeah.
but that's just a tangent that I really fully believe in, not to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
on
Well,
to that.
we should also be teaching like boys, for example, the same thing, because I feel like there's this pressure of like, where boys grow up thinking that they can't, that they have to be even more silent because
Right.
they're guys,
Yeah.
and society has put this pressure on them that if something happens to them, not to speak up because they may be looked at as weak.
Yeah.
And so that's something else that I really want to break the stigma of. I feel like men should be able to come forward and say, this happened to me and I need, resources or help. And I found that with my nonprofit too. We have an event coming up called Denim Day. And recently I had a few men come forward to say, how can I help? And that just made me feel so good. Because normally we have a lot of women helping, and that's great because, you know, there's a higher percentage of women that go through that type of trauma, but we can't forget that men go through it as well. So to see a few men come forward and say, hey, how can I get involved, is just amazing to have that representation, so that other boys can see like, oh, if they're helping out, like that means I can speak up about this type of situation.
Yeah, it's just insane to think that there's a stigma that like guys always want it, and like I hear the most heartbreaking stories, and then people are like, "Yeah, you're a man." I'm like, "No, this is terrible. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to put up with this." Like, and it's really great so that you're in the community, and you're doing a lot of outreach, and you're spreading the word. Why don't you talk? You just mentioned it a little bit, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Denim Day coming up.
Denim Day. So Denim Day is really interesting. Denim Day actually started in the 90s, and it's based on a true story. There was a woman in Italy who had gotten raped by her driving instructor. And she was, I believe she was either early 20s, maybe late teens. But her driving instructor was in his 40s, and this was reported. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court threw out the case because she was wearing tight jeans. So their justification behind it was that he must have helped her take her jeans off, therefore implying consent. We just talked about this. Yes
Right.
is yes, no is no. And we joke about it, but like it's a serious situation. So the women in the Italian parliament decided to wear jeans in solidarity with her the following day after this case had gotten thrown out. So a nonprofit called Peace Over Violence in California decided to kind of pick up this Denim Day situation, and they kind of made it an official calendar date where we all nationally stand in solidarity with these types of victims by wearing jeans. So they're the ones who originally started it in the 90s, and it always lands on the last Wednesday of April because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So when I heard about this story, it like really touched me. And being that I'm a sexual assault survivor myself, I'm like, how can we use this platform to raise awareness here locally? So this is now Denim Day this year will take place on April 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. at European Village. And this is our third annual. So this is our third year of doing it. The first year, we raised the money and it went to Peace Over Violence because I did not have a nonprofit yet at the time, but I still wanted to bring that support locally. But last year and this year will obviously benefit the National Care Foundation, which is the nonprofit that I'm the founder of. Now, it is called the National Care Foundation because I do speak nationally and bring awareness nationally. But the donations that we get in, I normally do focus first on local before it goes out, if that makes sense. So Denim Day is that event where I really want to stand in solidarity with local victims and raise money for local support systems like the support group. It's a goal of ours too to have therapists on staff, but that costs money. So it would be nice to get enough donations to maybe have some therapists that can help some of our survivors that may need that ongoing support as well. But yeah, so that's Denim Day, and it's great. It's free to attend, and we have vendor opportunities. Normally, the vendors are going to be other resources within the community. So that's the R in CARE. CARE stands for Center for Advocacy, Resources, and Equity. So resources is a big deal to me. So I want to spotlight other nonprofits and other resources in the community that could better the quality of life of a survivor of trauma.
Wow, I love that. So I'll make sure I have the description, the details in the description for that. Definitely check it out. And I know, I mean, you guys are doing it annually, so if you do happen to
Yeah.
miss one because it is coming up, definitely check out Erica, connect with Erica, see how you can get involved with the next one. I think this is a really important event. I'll definitely see if I can be there. I would love to be there and support you guys if I can.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
yeah, of course. Is there any like what is the best way that people can contact you before I wrap it up?
So best way to contact us, we're on all social media platforms at NTL Care Foundation. And also, I'm sure the information is going to be out there for everyone, but NTL Care Foundation is best. We also have my email. You can email me directly with any questions, comments, concerns. That's Erica with a C at ntlcarefoundation.org. And then the website is also ntlcarefoundation.org. So everything matches just so it's easy.
There you go. Well, I'll
Yeah.
definitely again have all of the information in the description so people can click, copy and paste whatever makes sense a little bit easier. So again, Erica, thank you so much for the time today. It's such a pleasure to know you, and it's such a pleasure to be able to kind of bring a little bit more awareness, hopefully, to this amazing cause that you're supporting. So again, thank you so much.
I appreciate you as well. Thank you for having
Of
me.
course. And to everyone listening, I really appreciate you as well, and I will see you next time.